Have you ever felt your blood run cold because your dog kept barking at a dark corner where nothing was there? What if it was not a ghost at all, but something far sadder, stranger, and much closer to home? When your dog suddenly barks at an empty corner, it can feel supernatural, but that moment usually begins with senses working harder than ours. Dogs do not need visible movement to react, because their world is built from faint vibrations, drifting odors, distant clicks, and tiny changes in pressure. What seems like nothing to us may be a pipe ticking, a moth scratching, a neighbor moving upstairs, or rain tapping deep inside walls. A dark hallway can also distort sound, making one small noise bounce strangely, so your dog locks onto a direction before you hear anything. Many owners freeze because the barking feels eerie, especially at night, but fear grows fastest when the human mind fills silence with imagined meanings. Dogs are not seeing ghosts by default. They are usually detecting information that never reaches our slower, duller, more human set of senses. Their hearing reaches higher frequencies, their noses read layered scent trails, and their brains are wired to treat uncertainty as something worth announcing. That is why a dog may stare, stiffen, then bark at a blank wall long before the owner notices any practical cause nearby. Sometimes the trigger is temporary, like wind under a door, a rodent behind plaster, or water shifting through old metal pipes. Sometimes the trigger lingers, like mildew, insects, territorial scent, electrical humming, or a repeated outdoor sound arriving through one familiar corner. To your dog, the barking is not random drama. It is often a report, a warning, or a request for the household to pay attention. The problem begins when owners interpret every strange bark the same way, because not all barking at nothing comes from the same inner state. One kind is alert barking, where the dog hears or smells something unusual and reacts with focus, confidence, and a clear sense of purpose. Another kind is distress barking, where the dog seems disoriented, unsettled, restless, or unable to settle even after the environment becomes quiet. Those two patterns can look similar from across a room, but their body language usually tells very different emotional stories underneath the sound. An alert dog often points its chest forward, fixes its gaze, and barks in bursts, as if saying something specific changed over there. To a distressed dog may pace, hesitate, bark without strong direction, circle the same area, or keep reacting even after checking the space repeatedly. This is why the bark itself matters less than the whole pattern around it, including posture, recovery speed, and whether reassurance actually helps. If your dog barks once, investigates, then relaxes, that usually suggests sensory detection rather than a deeper problem building inside the brain. If your dog keeps barking at emptiness, especially with confusion or nighttime wandering, the cause may be more than hidden noise. Older dogs can develop canine cognitive dysfunction, often shortened to CCD, which changes memory, sleep cycles, recognition patterns, and reactions to familiar spaces. A senior dog with cognitive decline may misread shadows, forget room layouts, and become startled by ordinary sounds or react fearfully to familiar corners. The barking then is no longer a clean warning signal. It can become an expression of confusion, uncertainty, and a brain struggling to organize reality. That difference matters, because solving hidden environmental triggers requires investigation, while helping a cognitively aging dog requires patience, routine, and medical guidance. Before assuming the worst, start by watching when the barking happens and whether the same location, time, or weather pattern appears again. Repeated barking near bathrooms, kitchens, basements, or heaters can point toward pipes, vents, insects, rodents, or mechanical sounds your dog tracks consistently. Repeated barking near windows, doors, or ceiling lines can point toward outside scent flow, distant footsteps, passing animals, or shifting light reflections. Night barking deserves special attention because the house becomes quieter, meaning hidden sounds stand out more sharply and shadows become harder for dogs to interpret. Some dogs also become more vigilant after dark because vision drops, so they rely even more on hearing and smell. A house that feels peaceful to you may sound crowded to your dog, filled with humming wires, settling wood, and movement behind surfaces. That is why checking the environment is not overreacting. It is the most grounded first step when mysterious barking starts repeating. Listen near the area your dog targets and notice subtle sounds, especially ticking, dripping, scratching, buzzing, or airflow that feels stronger than usual. Check for loose vents, water pressure changes, insect activity, small gaps under doors, and objects that shift when heaters or air conditioners start. Pay attention to smell, too, because dogs may react to mold, pest trails, outdoor animal scent, or chemical odors introduced by cleaning products. If the barking started after rearranging furniture, changing lighting, or bringing new items home, that altered sensory map may explain the behavior. Dogs build comfort from predictable space, so even a new mirror, lamp shadow, or reflective surface can create temporary uncertainty. In those cases, the barking is less about fear of nothing and more about recalibrating to a changed room that now feels unfamiliar. Watch your dog's recovery after barking, because recovery tells you whether the nervous system is finishing the job or getting stuck. A dog who barks, checks, sniffs, and settles is usually processing information successfully, even if the trigger remains hidden from human notice. A dog who cannot disengage may be carrying rising stress, and that stress can make every small sound feel bigger than it is. This is where owners accidentally add fuel, because a startled reaction teaches the dog that the moment truly is alarming. Running to the corner, speaking frantically, or scanning the darkness with tension can validate fear instead of helping the dog return to baseline. Calm investigation works better than dramatic reassurance, because your dog reads your breathing, pace, posture, and voice before understanding your words. The goal is not to punish the bark immediately, but to understand whether your dog is warning, worrying, or mentally losing orientation. The punishment can silence the sound without fixing the cause, which means the dog may stay stressed while simply becoming quieter around you. That silence can look like improvement, but inside the dog, the nervous system may remain activated and ready to erupt again. A better approach is to gather clues: location, hour, duration, posture, direction, recovery, sleep quality, and any recent changes in the home. Patterns often reveal what single incidents hide, especially when the behavior feels mysterious because it happens fast and disappears before humans inspect it. If the barking clusters around sunset, midnight, or early dawn, low light and circadian disruption may be part of the picture. If it clusters after loud days, visitors, or long absences, accumulated stress may be lowering your dog's threshold for reacting. And if it appears mostly in old age, with pacing, staring, altered sleep, and house confusion, cognitive decline becomes more important to consider. CCD rarely arrives as one dramatic symptom. It usually reveals itself through small changes that owners dismiss until the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. A dog may stand in familiar rooms looking uncertain, forget why it entered a space, or vocalize at night without clear reason. The barking then is not mischievous, stubborn, or spiritual. It can be the sound of a brain losing its usual landmarks. That realization matters emotionally, because owners often feel fear first, then guilt, when the real answer is age, confusion, and nervous system strain. Compassion becomes easier once the barking stops feeling personal or supernatural and starts making sense as communication from a struggling animal. Still, not every older dog who barks at walls has CCD, so careful observation matters more than jumping toward one explanation. A healthy senior may simply hear something hidden better than you, especially in a quiet home with old pipes or active insects. Likewise, a young dog may seem dramatic simply because its alert system is fast, sensitive, and eager to report anything unusual. Breed tendencies can shape intensity too, because watchdog breeds and vocal individuals are more likely to announce tiny changes immediately. But breed does not explain everything. The context, the body language, and the dog's recovery still matter most. Think of alert barking as information with direction, while distressed barking often feels less organized, less resolved, and more emotionally sticky. The dog who hears a sound in the wall usually points towards something and then checks whether the family will respond. The dog who is mentally overwhelmed may bark, wander, stare, return, and repeat, as if the room never fully becomes understandable again. That looping quality is one reason owners describe the behavior as haunting, because repetition without visible cause feels especially unsettling at night. Yet repetition is also a clue, because true sensory triggers often anchor to one place, while confusion may spread across several familiar spaces. Notice whether your dog barks only at one corner or gradually starts reacting in hallways, doorways, and empty patches of floor. A narrow target often suggests a localized trigger, while expanding targets can suggest rising anxiety, disrupted sleep, or cognitive changes. The timing of rest matters too, because a tired brain and tired nervous system are less able to filter ambiguous input. Dogs who are understimulated, overstimulated, or sleep-deprived may become jumpier, making ordinary sounds feel urgent and harder to dismiss. So part of solving the problem is not just checking walls, but checking the dog's daily rhythm, stress load, and quality of rest. A calmer body interprets the world more clearly, while a strained body treats uncertainty as danger much more quickly. That is where soothing scent work can help, not as magic, but as a nervous system support tool. Gentle, dog-safe scent routines can create a familiar anchor that tells the brain this room still belongs to safety and recovery. The important word is gentle, because strong fragrances can overwhelm dogs and make an already sensitive moment even harder to process. Instead of flooding the room, use very mild, veterinarian-approved calming options and watch whether your dog's breathing and pacing soften. A familiar blanket carrying home scent can also help, because known smell cues often regulate dogs better than novelty ever will. This works especially well when the barking comes from general unease rather than one specific hidden noise source demanding investigation. Scent alone will not fix rodents in walls, a broken vent, or cognitive decline, but it can reduce overall arousal. And when arousal drops, you can observe more accurately because the dog is no longer escalating from every tiny ambiguous signal. Create a simple response ritual. Pause, breathe, and look where the dog points. Check briefly, then guide the dog back toward calm. That routine teaches two important lessons at once. The owner takes signals seriously, and the household also knows how to settle afterward. Dogs feel safer when alerting has a predictable ending, because unresolved tension can keep the body waiting for the next threat. You do not need to argue with the bark. You need to give the nervous system somewhere stable to land. A calm voice, slower movement, soft lighting, and a familiar resting area can do more than repeated commands shouted across darkness. For some dogs, low background sound also helps by masking tiny environmental noises that would otherwise stand out and trigger vigilance. That can be especially useful in older homes where pipes, settling boards, and an outside movement create intermittent noises throughout the night. If you suspect a hidden physical trigger, inspect practically instead of imaginatively, because real answers usually hide in ordinary causes. Look for pest signs, leaking pipes, trapped moisture, shifting vents, loose fixtures, exterior animal activity, and reflective surfaces catching headlights after dark. If nothing obvious appears, A veterinarian visit becomes important when barking is new, frequent, escalating, or paired with other behavior changes. Mention sleep disruption, pacing, staring, confusion, appetite shifts, accidents indoors, and changes in social responsiveness, especially in older dogs. Those details help separate sensory alerting from pain, anxiety, hearing changes, vision decline, or early cognitive dysfunction. Pain matters because a physically uncomfortable dog can become more reactive, less tolerant, and harder to soothe when startled by ordinary sounds. Vision changes matter because uncertain sight can make shadows feel unstable, causing barking that looks mysterious but begins with perception problems. Hearing changes can also distort how sounds are located, so a dog may react intensely without accurately identifying where the noise began. In cognitive decline, the issue is often not stronger hearing or smell, but weaker interpretation of familiar sensory information. That means the same quiet house can start feeling confusing, fragmented, or strangely unfamiliar to a dog who once moved through it calmly. Owners often hope the dog will simply grow out of it, but age-related confusion usually needs support rather than waiting. Support can include steadier routines, easier nighttime navigation, gentler lighting, scent anchors, veterinary guidance, and more patient response patterns. The emotional shift for the owner is important too, because fear creates distance, while understanding makes care softer and more useful. When you stop asking what invisible force is here, you can start asking what my dog is detecting or struggling with. That question opens better solutions, because it keeps you grounded in body language, environment, health, and nervous system state. It also honors the dog honestly, not as a mystical creature and not as a machine, but as a sensitive animal. Dogs live closer to raw sensation than humans do, which is exactly why they sometimes react before we understand the cause. What feels eerie to us may feel obvious to them, even if the message arrives through sound, scent, or confusion we cannot access. So the corner itself is not the whole story. The real story lives inside the dog's sensory and emotional experience. An alert bark says something changed, and the dog trusts the family should know about it right now. A distressed bark says something feels wrong inside the experience itself, and the dog cannot easily bring its body back down. Learning to hear that difference is one of the kindest skills an owner can build over time. It changes the moment from a frightening mystery into a readable conversation, even when the trigger stays hidden for a while. And once the moment becomes readable, your dog no longer has to carry that strange experience alone in the dark. You become the steady part of the scene, the one who checks, listens, softens the room, and helps the body settle again. That steady presence will not remove every pipe sound, insect scratch, or aging brain change, but it will change how your dog endures it. For a sensitive dog, feeling accompanied can matter almost as much as removing the trigger itself. That is why routine matters so much after strange barking episodes, especially for dogs who spiral once uncertainty enters the room. Predictable evenings, familiar resting spots, gentle transitions, and low-conflict responses teach the nervous system that alarm has an ending. Over time, many dogs bark less not because they hear less, but because recovery becomes faster and more practiced. And if the barking does not improve, the clear notes you collected make medical and behavioral help much more effective. Instead of saying my dog barks at ghosts, as you can say exactly when, where, how long, and what else changed. That turns fear into information, and information is what helps both owners and veterinarians protect the dog more wisely. So when your dog barks at nothing, do not start with the supernatural. Start with the senses, the pattern, and the body. Check the room, check the routine, check the age of the dog, and check whether recovery still happens cleanly afterward. Use calm investigation for possible triggers, gentle scent support for nervous system soothing, and veterinary help when confusion starts joining the picture. Because most of the time, your dog is not responding to nothing at all. Your dog is responding to something you cannot yet read.